What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with another Monday Night Football two-game slate, some NFL DFS picks, and lineup advice. Week 7, DraftKings and FanDuel. We have the Baltimore Ravens and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as well as the Los Angeles Chargers and the Arizona Cardinals. Welcome. I am Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined like always on these two-game slates by Jack, owner of DFS Magic, creator of the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy, and Short Slate Crusher. Jack, now the people were wondering the first couple of weeks of the season when we did these videos, when would the alternate location Jack appear? I see you're in your car. What's up, man? How's it going?
Hey, good afternoon-ish, lunchtime, not morning this time. Yep, for fan favorites out there, I am doing this midday grind in the car here because I couldn't miss a two-gamer with you, Brian. And we think it's a good one, right? I think we're really excited to get into this one today.
Yeah, I think you and I both agree this is the best two-game slate we've had so far in 2024, and maybe even going back to last year, one of the better ones that we've had for a variety of reasons. So, all of you recurrent viewers, you know what we're going to do here, but for you new viewers, the agenda for this video is we will go team by team at start, focusing on the two-gamer, give you injuries that impact the slate for all 4 teams on this slate. Then we will dive into our 3 pillar two-game strategies, our short slate strategies, leaving salary on the table, the low-owned players that we can play, and mega stacking. And I think one sticks out in particular on this slate. We'll get to that section and how it applies to these two games. And then we'll, at the very end, we'll give some takes on the 2 Showdown slates as well. So if you're a Showdown player, make sure you stick around until the very end. So Jack, let's not waste anybody's time, and let's get you out of that car as soon as possible. So we'll start with the first game, Baltimore and Tampa Bay. Baltimore just won somewhat significant injury. Broderick Washington, their defensive lineman, is out. That will give a slight bump to the Tampa Bay running game, which is pretty important considering the note that we listened to the coaching staff talk about. Because if you saw last week when Rashad White was out, Bucky Irving was the chalk in DFS, rightfully so. He still hit value. Sean Tucker, who a lot of dynasty guys and best ball guys last year liked, undrafted free agent, he absolutely exploded in a secondary role. And the coaching staff this week is saying what they're going to do is they're going to give Rashad White, Bucky Irving, and Sean Tucker a series each to start the game. Maybe may not be in that order, but they're all going to get a series, and then they're going to ride the hot hand after that. So that is very interesting for DFS, and I want to get your take on that. But as far as defensive injuries for Tampa Bay goes, their top corner Jamel Dean is out. That's a big bump to Baltimore wide receivers in their passing game. And then Vita Vea popped up on the injury report on Saturday with a hamstring. Obviously, as he's out, if he's out, that's a big bump to Baltimore's offense in general, but their Baltimore running backs as well. We'll have to monitor the elevations and inactives today to see if he truly is a game time decision or maybe out. So, Jack, your take on this Tampa Bay running back situation, because our ownership right now has Rashad White as the clear guy as the favorite by the field, but this this news item would have us indicate that they should probably be much closer in ownership.
Yeah, and especially Tucker, right? I mean, we always like to look at other projection systems, and they have Irving. They seem to be aware that he's getting the ball. They do not seem to be aware that Tucker is going to get the ball. So, as we'll get to in our strategies, one of the 3 main strategies we advocate for these two gamers is just one very low owned play in a lineup, and like Tucker is easily that, right? I mean, he's cheap, he's low owned. Like to your point, he might score 0, right? So you're probably not going to use him in like a 20-man contest. But if you're looking to get unique in a large field, that is one very obvious play that no one would say is too crazy given the information that you scooped there.
I mean, honestly, how many times have we ever had a guy be 1% owned the following slate after he scored 37 points? I can't even think of a time that that would happen.
I never.
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible. Yeah, but I mean, we're gonna see that, right? And I mean, we talk about this every video, right? Backup running backs in these slates, like that's a real thing. So, yeah, absolutely in play tonight.
Absolutely. So, all right, let's move on to the Chargers and the Arizona game as far as injuries are concerned. LA dealing with a ton of defensive injuries. Joey Bosa still is likely going to remain out dealing with his issues. They're likely going to be without both of their starting outside corners, Christian Fulton and Dean Leonard. Dean Leonard has been ruled out. Christian Fulton just won limited practice on Saturday, so seems extremely unlikely that he plays. That's got to be a massive bump to this Arizona passing game. Who is getting Marvin Harrison back? left early last week with that concussion. He cleared protocol. He will be in the game tonight. And I know you and I both are big fans of Harrison and his ownership and the Arizona passing game in general tonight. These defensive injuries just lead to even greater optimism for us. On the offensive side of the ball, the Chargers, Hayden Hurst, starting tight end, he is out. Will Disley will be the tight end one. He's super cheap and will be popular in all formats. Quentin Johnston, starting receiver, is out. DJ Chark was activated, so we expect DJ Chark to kind of slide into that Quentin Johnston role. And then Gus Edwards, who he remains on IR. Just a reminder of what happened in the first game back, or the first game without Gus Edwards in this new look Chargers offense. J.K. Dobbins, 57 snaps, a career high in playing time and total touches for Dobbins. We'll see if they continue to feed him the ball like that. Kamani Vidal, who everyone was in love with in best ball season, 19 snaps, scored the touchdown as well. He's super cheap. And then on Arizona side, their defensive tackle is out, so that bumps LA running backs, and Zay Jones was activated. He'll probably be the wide receiver 4, but just interesting for large field only. Jack, I think the biggest takeaway is before we even dove into these defensive injuries, you were texting me about Arizona's offense being a great mega stack on this slate, and this just adds to it.
And I'll be honest, I was not tracking the defensive back injuries when I was already excited about Arizona. So yes, it got me even more excited. Yeah, I think this is my favorite overstack in recent memory. I just like how often do you get, a pass heavy team with a mobile quarterback that can be optimal, with clear targets, clear bringbacks, affordable salary, and the quarterback's not like 50% owned. I mean, how like has that ever happened? I don't know.
No, it's just, I mean, and this is why we like this slate so much. And again, it's not a guarantee that Arizona is the best stack on the slate, but we really like it compared to the ownership. And Jack, for the new viewers who may not understand, and we'll get to that here, we'll dive deep into the strategies. But when you say overstack or bringbacks, what exactly are you referring to in this Chargers and Arizona game?
Yeah, so typically, in the main slates, if you watch those videos with Brian or play that, I think 3-man and sometimes even 2-man stacking is optimal with the big slates. For these short slates, for us, overstacking is at least 4. FanDuel, you're limited to 4. DraftKings, obviously, you can go up to 5, 6, or even 7. And we'll always point out we have seen I always forget, was that a 6-man stack, a 6x2,
Yep.
6x1 or something on DraftKings one
Yep.
at one time?
Yep, exactly. Six
Yeah.
man, as we always talk about that Pittsburgh playoff game. Yep.
Yeah, and the field generally doesn't do it enough. They do it, but not enough, not as much as it wins. And to your point, I think tonight we're going to see even less of it because we have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, who are very expensive, projected well. People like to click them in, and they don't really correlate well with their teammates. So that's just going to drive a lot of lineups to be Baltimore 2-3-man, and it also just doesn't leave a lot of ownership for the overstacking of the other teams.
That is a great summary of what we expect the field to do tonight. So let's dive into these two game strategies individually, these short slate strategies individually. As I said at the top of the show, it's leaving salary on the table. It is overstacking. It is playing low owned plays, and we'll go through each one. I'll hit on the DraftKings side. Jack will chime in on the FanDuel side since that's where he is primarily playing. However, I believe on this slate, a lot of the strategies will overlap depending on, it doesn't matter which site you're playing. A lot of the strategies will apply to both sites. And so, Jack, if we look at leaving salary on the table, if you remember if you were around for the first video we did in week 1, we said salary didn't matter. And in the following videos we did, we said salary was more normal. This appears like a more normal salary slate. When I ran our builder this morning with just a couple simple rules, most of the optimal lineups from our builder weren't leaving more than $1,500 on the table. Most were definitely not leaving more than $2,000 on the table. So, Jack, while it's possible, I wouldn't say that is our primary way of getting different tonight.
And I think, we don't, I guess we haven't ever like formally ranked them in like, the order we'd prefer, but this is probably a good time to point out that if you don't have to leave salary, you shouldn't,
Yep.
right? Like that's kind of a way to just, if you have to get different, like on Showdown, if you're playing a chalky captain, like you have no choice, you have to leave salary. But here, as we're going to talk about with the next two, with low end plays and overstacking, we already see opportunities there to get unique. So yeah, I'm with you. I think the builder optimals don't support it, and also I just think you don't need to do it to get unique tonight.
Yeah, I really don't think you do. And I don't know if you've dove too much into it, but I doubt you're leaving more than 2,000 in really any lineups tonight, maybe a couple. But I feel like, at least based on what you just said, most of your lineups will be in that 500 to 1,000 leftover, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think I ran it down to 57. I don't know. I'll go take another look. I mean, sometimes with these backup guys like Tucker and like the wide receiver three for some team, they get a little lower. But I try to do that normal thing we talk about where look at the lineups that have like the most salary left, and just start like making some hand swaps and being like, can this guy outscore that guy? If you have like, Fahoko, like the sub wide receiver for the Chargers, and you could just swap him in for Derrick Henry, like, yeah, that's probably not a good lineup, right? But
Right.
he could outscore some of the kind of other second tier wide receivers in the slate. So anyway, that's kind of how we always talk about approaching the salaries. You can start on the side of being a little more flexible, and then just you have to look at the lineups at the end and make sure they're not, too insane.
Yeah, and I think of all the 1% owned guys, the trashier guys that we're looking at, almost all of them, you want to be pretty much near the salary cap on both sites. But Tucker is the exception, Jack. 4,200 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, Tucker is double check his salary here. He is 5K, so a little more expensive, but not that much more. 4,200 FanDuel is pretty crazy. If he looks good on his first drive and gets the bulk of the carries, he could outscore all of the running backs. Not saying it's possible or even likely, but he's a guy that you could leave a bunch of salary because he could be the number one scoring running back if he somehow managed to produce half of what he did last week.
Yeah, I mean, especially Dobbins. Sure, he had one game with a lot of run, but who knows? And it's not like he's a guy that's scoring 20. He's not Christian McCaffrey, right? But he's
Right.
owned like Christian McCaffrey tonight. So yeah, that's a great one. And certainly, you could leave enough where he could certainly outscore Rashad White, right? So
Yes.
there's 2,100 right there. So there's a 57.9 that's reasonable on that swap alone.
Exactly. And speaking of Dobbins ownership, that's a nice transition into the low ownership. But let's talk about the highest owned guys. J.K. Dobbins, outrageous ownership on both sites, right?
Yeah, just a price per dollar play. That's all it is, which is kind of what we see a lot on these Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen type slates. People are just looking for the value, right, to make it fit.
Yeah, we got him over 70% on both sites, which that is generally reserved for the McCaffreys, the Tyreek Hills, etc. We saw in week one, we saw what some 80% because of the salary. But J.K. Dobbins, while he has a great workload, pretty decent matchup, is he a 70% plus player? I think you and I would agree that he is not. So I really don't think you have much of a choice to go underweight on. Now you don't have to completely fade him, but I don't see how you could play 70% Dobbins in your lineups, and I don't think you even can if you're doing the overstacking that we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah, I agree that's I don't know if you have like a doing MME, but like generally for like chalk guys that I know I'm not gonna get to the field, I kind of use like 50% as a rule of thumb. Like I don't really want to be much under that. But I'm sure like so maybe 30 to 40 like I'd be happy with if I was building 150 lineups for example for him.
And when you say 50%, you mean 50% of his projected ownership, not 50% total exposure, right?
Sorry, yes, like 50% leverage. Yeah, so I'm okay being like 50% underweight on the field. Yep, you got it.
Totally. Got it. All right. Let's talk about some of these other lower owned plays. I'm looking at guys that are less than 20% projected ownership on DraftKings. I'm sure most of these overlap with FanDuel. Maybe you can name a couple guys you like as well. We have the Charger passing game, really. Justin Herbert going to be the lowest owned quarterback. Joshua Palmer stepping in and obviously gets a little bit of bump with Quentin Johnston out of the lineup. The non Rashad White Tampa Bay running backs. Marvin Harrison, under 20%, a likely wide receiver one on this slate. And I think that's probably the biggest reason you liked Arizona when you see a stud receiver like that with his ownership. And it is really tough to get him in there. And then you have Kamani Vidal, Justice Hill, these secondary running backs, these pass catching running backs. So definitely some options. And the Baltimore tight ends. No one wants to stack them, even though they're playing Lamar. So, I mean, they're actual, real, decent NFL players in this group.
Yeah, I think mostly echo yours. I mean, let's talk about Herbert for a second. Like, yes, I'm super excited to play Kyler, but sub 10% actually good quarterback. Arizona's defense is horrendous.
Yeah.
And like we said, Chargers have defensive injuries, so I mean that game seems more likely to turn into a shootout than the books are in the field are giving it credit for. So if James Conner wants to go score 3 touchdowns, right, Herbert could easily wind up optimal if the first game flames a little bit. We covered Tucker, right, at running back. What I mean, are you trying to play Vidal? Like, what's your thoughts on given that Dobbins? I mean, so he's literally the minimum. He's 4K on FanDuel, so he's 2,700 less than Dobbins. I don't know what he is on
Yes.
DraftKings.
So he's 4K on FanDuel. Kamani Vidal is 4,400 on DraftKings. We know he's going to play snaps, so his probably median snap projection is probably higher than Sean Tucker's, and he'll get a little bit more ownership as a result. But I'm trying to remove my bias because I drafted so much of him throughout the summer. But he is a good player, good pass protector, and I can't think of more incredible leverage than against the highest owned player on the slate than his backup running back, for whatever reason that may be. I don't want to say it's injury, it just could be how the production pans out. But when you get what 5% Vidal versus 70% Dobbins, it's a pretty no-brainer. And I think you could honestly play both together depending on the lineup that you create.
Yep, that's a good. I think we have a couple opportunities with that. I mean, I don't know if you would try to go with any of the Tampa Bay running backs in the same lineup. Baltimore probably not, and then
Arizona definitely not.
Cardinals. Yeah. It's a little dicey tonight. So let's see. Tight ends, I'm with you. Yeah, it's a typical thing the field does where like if there's two players competing for a position, the projections get depressed. They don't want to play either one. Likely or Andrews. So what do? Especially if you play multiple lineups, you just play both, right? Not in the same lineup necessarily. You hope one does well at lower ownership. Obviously, both those guys have big upside, right? Especially when you compare it to like Will Disley, who's pretty much a career blocker, getting like 3 to 4 times the ownership of Mark Andrews and likely. I mean, come on, man.
That's why we bring you on here,
Um,
Jack, for the takes to make fun of the ownership. Uh,
Talking shit about guys that are going to score tonight.
I
Yeah.
know, just like locking the touchdown.
So wide receiver, we didn't talk about this yet. I mean, more in the spirit of overstacking low on plays. Let's start with Arizona. Greg Dortch should basically be zero owned
Yep.
on FanDuel, like probably less than 5%. Obviously, a guy with big upside, right? He was kind of a darling, right? Season. Is he pretty low on DraftKings as well?
Yeah, DraftKings, we have him under 20%, probably closer to 10%, if not lower. And he's a guy that's going to get probably 4+ targets. I mean, he has a couple games mixed in with 2 targets. Obviously, Zay Jones coming back makes it a little murky, but that's going to depress his ownership even more. And again, if you're overstacking or you're stacking that game in general, then Dortch, I think, has to be in play. And if the nice thing about overstacking for those who ask or don't understand the true benefits of overstacking or mega stacking one game, really, Jack, is twofold, and you can expand on this. One is if one game, one player takes up all the production. Let's say Baltimore, Derrick Henry rushes for 3 touchdowns. Not many other people on Baltimore get there, and that gives all the opportunity for LA and Arizona guys to creep into the optimal lineup. The second way is if one game is just way higher scoring than the other game, right? For whatever reason that may be, LA, Arizona puts up 60, Baltimore and Tampa Bay is a slugfest 30, 35 points. That's the other way. So you actually have 2 outs in mega stacking, which I think most people don't think about.
Yeah, the first out is the one I think people don't actually think about, and have a great slate. I mean, the second game is great for that overstacking for that perspective in the sense that Derrick Henry could steal all the points. Lamar Jackson could steal enough points from other players, but not be optimal at his price.
True.
Mike Evans could certainly just score 2 or 3 touchdowns, right? One of these running backs could. So yeah, and back to the Arizona receivers. I just wanted to look. I mean, we know Zay Jones was a showdown guy we liked in the past. He's like a deep ball guy, right?
Yep.
Orch is a slot guy. So yeah, I mean, I think we don't normally like give lineups, but I think Arizona is so clear cut. We can just like tell you if you're playing small field and you want to play Arizona, right? I think you would just go Connor, Harrison, and McBride, right?
Yep.
There's guys that are all super involved. If you're playing large field, you can do that, and you can mix in, a max one of Wilson, Dortch. You could even throw some Zay Jones in there. I'll probably throw a few in there, right? So I mean, do you see any other way to play Arizona? Feels like as clear cut as it's like, we couldn't make this up if we were, any better. Like it's as good as it can be.
Yeah, I mean it's textbook for what we're trying to do. And yeah, Zay Jones, if you listen to the players' comments after practice on Saturday, how excited they were to get Zay Jones back. Every quote, and I don't know if like the coach just told them to say this or like the coach just harped on this or something, but like every player, Kyler Murray, Michael Wilson, they were like, yeah, Zay Jones can play all 3 positions. That's really going to give some versatility to us. So he maybe plays more than we think, right? Not just a slot guy, can play inside, outside, take some snaps from all these guys. So yeah, I think he's definitely worth a dart throw in large field.
And then I guess circling back through the other low-owned receivers, we have Quentin Johnson out, right? Which we have not seen. So Palmer, Fahoko. Anyone else? You interested in either of those guys or anyone else?
Yeah, I think DJ Chark, while he still has the IR tag on DraftKings, I think he is expected to be activated this afternoon by 4 p.m. Eastern. So let's monitor that. DJ Chark, an actual NFL veteran who has produced in the past, could get on the field tonight as well. He's a min price on both sites. So he's another 1% option that is extremely interesting.
Yeah, that's one we'll have to, maybe in the Discord we can monitor. I think the key for that will be like, do other sites pick up on him quick enough
Right.
to get him projected? Because you could see other sites being like looking at his 3-year average and like, oh, he's a good player, and then suddenly he's like 30% owned as the obvious value. But if the sites are slow, like it's kind of like he's either going to be 30% owned or like two,
Right.
right? It's just whether or not these few sites that the field uses gets populated. Let's talk. I guess we should talk about other. We've gushed over Arizona Chargers, but Baltimore Tampa. If you are going to play it, Brian, like what's your strategy? Small or large field? Get a little different or a lot different if you are trying to play like Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, etc.
Yeah, every Baltimore optimal lineup is like 2 or 3 Ravens, not 4. So I think that's your easy step. Step one is playing Lamar, 1 or 2 pass catchers, and Derrick Henry, and or the defense. Bring back multiple Tampa Bay guys, and then I don't know. I mean, so yeah, Baker Mayfield is going to be obviously somewhat popular on a 2-game slate, but he's got so many options to mega stack him as well, right? Baker with Evans and Godwin, or Shepard or McMillan and Kate Otten, and one of the Tampa Bay running backs, maybe Rashad White because he's the best pass catcher of the group. But I can easily see a 4 or 5 man Tampa Bay stack if the Arizona game busts. That's very easy if Derrick Henry Lamar steals all the touches for Baltimore side. So I think while Baltimore stacks are popping towards the optimal lineups in builders and simulations, I think I'd much rather just play a Tampa Bay mega stack and run back 1 or 2 Ravens.
Yeah, I love it. I think, and especially with the backup running back situation, right? There's an easy way to get different with Lamar. Even just like multiple bringbacks and then the 4-man Ravens. Yeah, that all makes sense to me. I think one note on defense, at least for FanDuel, I know defense, we kind of just say play everything. Um, Tampa Bay has like a horrendous defense projection for some reason, and I mean and Baltimore's is like really high. It just seems kind of out of whack with like that game. I don't know. I mean Lamar Jackson is obviously a very good player, but I would certainly be overweight on like a sub 10% defense on a 2-game slate, kind of every time, no matter doesn't matter who it is,
Yeah.
right?
You have to. It's
Just chaos.
just based on pure variance and the nature of DST scoring. Like you have to. That's the only you have to. So I like that. It's a really good call. All right. Anything else we want to talk about mega stacking ownership? I think we've covered most of it. But do you have any other final thoughts on the strategy for the slate?
No, I think to recap, don't really need to leave salary tonight. Focus on mega stacking, and we outlined several really reasonable low owned plays that you can use to get different.
Exactly. All right, let's go to Showdown now. Before we do, make sure you are subscribed to the channel here on YouTube. It's free to do so. Easy way to support it. We have NBA coming up every single day starting tomorrow if you're an NBA DFS player. And the way we are able to pay those guys is more subscribers and more views we get here on YouTube. So if you're into that, make sure you're subscribed. You'll get notified when Jack and I go live with any short slate videos, in addition to the Showdown and main slate NFL videos we do every single week. So click subscribe, best way to support, and thumbs up. It literally takes a millisecond to do, and it surprisingly helps more than you would know. So go ahead and drop the subscribe and the like. We would certainly appreciate it here at Occupy Fantasy. All right, Jack, Showdown. I will do DraftKings. You will do FanDuel. And if we look at this first game in Baltimore and Tampa Bay, I'll just give you some angles. 1 or 2 that I'm thinking about is the Tampa Bay running back rotation. We've made it very clear how we can take advantage of this because we have Rashad White, the most popular of the group on DraftKings at 6,600. Irving is more expensive and will be lower owned, and Sean Tucker is basically non-existent ownership when you have popular values like Justice Hill, Sterling Shepard, Nelson Aguilar right below him. So I think that's the easiest way. And then what was interesting to me the past couple, and I think this probably applies to FanDuel as well, you can tell me, but the past couple of slates where we've had like a 30% captain projected, there have been a lot of low owned plays to mix in with them to make it easy to take away from some of that ownership and some of that duplication. I really don't see that much on this Baltimore and Tampa Bay slate, so that leads me to want to fade Lamar at captain more than I would on a different slate where there would be a handful of low owned guys we could play with him.
Yeah, it's interesting the pricing for the the Tampa running backs on the 2-gamer is very soft, but in the Showdown, it's kind of sharp. I mean, Irving and White on FanDuel are 10K, and Tucker's 8K, so it's not like he's minimum price.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, these Lamar slates are tough. I just, for this one on FanDuel, like it's the whenever you see these, we saw it last night too. Whenever you see teams with 2 elite wide receivers, the projections always kind of like middle each other, and as a result, they are lower owned at MVP captain than they should be. Godwin and Evans certainly could outscore Lamar Jackson, especially with the FanDuel added bonus for 100 yards. So I mean, that's the obvious place I would go, FanDuel. But yeah, if you want to play Lamar, certainly the Tampa running backs are low. What are your thoughts? I mean, like we talked about the 2-gamer, there's not a lot of correlation with Lamar. What about just overstacking Baltimore and putting in some of those like secondary guys, kind of 5-1, 4-1 builds? Like, do you think is that got any shot of being more unique tonight?
I think it's got a big shot at being unique. I don't know if it's got a big shot of winning, but it does have a much bigger shot of being
Right?
unique because we
Yeah.
have so many good and talented real positional players on Tampa Bay. But we know that no one's going to do that. So I think that is one angle. If you do want to play that, you could certainly force in 3+ Ravens per lineup on FanDuel and 4+ on DraftKings. And that is an easy way to get different because no one's going to be building that way.
Yeah. So yeah, I think in summary, always tough with Lamar. I would look at those receivers. And like we did talk about some of those low end plays for the 2-gamer do apply here as well. Let's talk about the fun one.
Yes, the fun one, Chargers and Arizona. I will go over to DraftKings really quickly. And I mean, we talked about the defensive back injuries for LA. We talked about Marvin Harrison being low owned. Second highest price player on DraftKings, which is a big reason why he will be low owned. 4% at captain we have projected on DraftKings. Sign me up every single time for a wide receiver one at 4% captain ownership, especially when the opposing team is missing likely their top 2 cornerbacks. So I think that's the easy play. Disley is going to be the popular value here on DraftKings. Starting tight end at just $2,800, rightfully so. He should be. I think small field and cash games, you definitely want to get him in there. But there is enough uncertainty in Zay Jones coming in their backup running back situation, the backup tight ends, even for the Chargers, we don't necessarily know that this is going to get all the routes. It could be Stone Smart or Eric Tomlinson. The LA receivers with Quentin Johnston being out and DJ Chark coming in, that could be pop. So I think there's enough low owned and uncertainty here that you can play popular captains if you didn't want to go the Marvin Harrison route.
Yeah, this one just seems almost there's too many good
I
options.
know,
Like
I
I was
know.
just looking at FanDuel, like I mean, James Conner is only 12%. Like he could easily win. Trey McBride is a tight end, but like he's had just monster games. Like no, I don't think it would shock anyone if he had like 130 yards and a touchdown and was optimal. McConkey is sub 5. Harrison is sub 5. Both guys that get tons of targets in like we talked about, especially with the injuries, like a potentially high scoring environment. Dobbins and as much as I love Murray, right, in the 2-gamer on the Showdown, I mean he is going to be very, very, very popular. Trying to think any low owned showdowns. I think the defenses look a little low
Yep.
in this game, and then you can go down to those guys like Dortch, Zay Jones, Fehoko, right? All guys, and Stone Smart would be the obvious trash plays to mix in if you are going to play Murray. So tons of options. It's hard to narrow it down. Honestly, I think it's going to take me a while to build this one just to figure out like what I want to do.
I think so. And would you fault anyone? I mean, if they believe in our advice and they agree with it, would you fault anyone for saying, I'm not even going to play the Baltimore Showdown slate. I'm just going to focus my attention on this Showdown slate in the 2-gamer, or maybe just this Showdown slate? Because, again, just because all 3 are available doesn't mean you have to play all 3.
Yes, I think from a bankroll management standpoint, if you're kind of trying to pick, like I would prioritize the Baltimore game the lowest. Like this game has a lot of good options for all field sizes. And I think the contests are probably better anyway since it's the late game. So I totally agree with that.
Yes, it is. And it looks like 50K to first on FanDuel and just 20K for the earlier game. So that can also be your tiebreaker if you're into that. So, all right, guys, that'll do it for this video. The daily plug is already up, OccupyFantasy.com. By the time this video is posted, it will have been published. The link is in the description below. Our writer, Bismo, talks through kind of the same stuff we did here, lays out some more rankings, strategies for different contest types. We didn't go on very specific strategies for small field, cash, low risk, high risk, all that good stuff. Bismo did it for you in the daily plug, so make sure you go check that out. The builder that Jack created, that is up and running. Build up to 300 lineups using all the criteria we talk about. It was built for these types of slates in mind, so very few, if any, optimizers or builders build 2-game slates like the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy. So check that out if you haven't already. And our Occupy model has all the projected ownership and the rankings for tonight's slate as well. Jack, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Oh, I think we hit it, man. Let's good luck tonight. Hopefully Derrick Henry doesn't end us with a 75-yard screen pass touchdown on the first drive. That's my only closing thought.
Fingers crossed. Let's hope not. Again, if you have questions, drop a comment below. I will monitor the channel throughout the day, and I will get back to you. Discord is obviously the best way. Join our community, talk to staff directly, sweat out the games with us. Link is in the description below. And again, one final ask, subscribe and like. It helps us out. It's mutually beneficial. So for Jack, I am Brian. Thank you for listening, as always, and good luck on this Monday night, Week 7, 2-game slate.